How did Canyon Park come to be?
Well, Monrovia Canyon and Saw Pit were destinations from the beginning, but access was not easy because there was no roadway. You had to hike from the mouth of the canyon all the way back in to access, for example, Monrovia Falls. But people did it. I have pictures of my grandmother and her friends, probably on a Sunday outing, I'm guessing about 1902. And I say that because there's a picture of them at the bottom of Monrovia Falls, and there's a huge boulder in the picture. The boulder is still there, but only the top is now visible because of fires and erosion. The bottom of the canyon has raised up at least 6 or 7 feet, and you just see the very top. But in this early picture, you can see someone's name painted on the side of this huge boulder with an 01, which I'm assuming stands for 1901. So the picture of my grandmother and her friends is probably after 1901, let's say 1902, 1903. What's interesting to me is they're all dressed in their Sunday best. The men in suits with vests and bowler hats, and the ladies with long skirts, blouses, and big floppy hats. And that's how they went hiking. You stayed dressed regardless. 1911 was the first road constructed to Canyon Park. It was a citywide volunteer effort. Taylor Reniker, it said, who had an early automobile, drove around town in the early morning hours honking his horn, waking people up, and then they assembled with picks, shovels, and whatever. I guess maybe one of the city crew had gone up there before and maybe set off a couple charges of dynamite to loosen rocks and so forth. Anyway, it was built with day labor and lots of... John Wiley's, what was his comment? Some of the men who hadn't raised a crop of blisters since they left the farm participated on that day to get the road built.
Are you saying they built the road by hand with
Yeah.
picks and shovels?
Yeah.
The road to Canyon Park?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Now, originally it was much different than it is now. It followed the stream bed. And when I was a youngster, you were very close to the stream all the way up. In fact, there were some houses in the mouth of near the mouth of the canyon. It was later on, when the flood control basin was put in, that the road was raised up from near the stream bed to the side of the canyon, and the containment basin put in that cut off access to Spanish Canyon.
So the original road was made for horses and carts, or people to walk, or cars, or...
1911, probably horses and buggies and a few cars. There weren't that many cars in Monrovia in 1911. But the idea was to construct a road so that it was much easier to access the park rather than hiking the stream bed to get up there. Emerson Flat was named after Ellie Emerson, who was an early settler. There was a long-running battle between Emerson and the city of Monrovia. He would divert water, claiming that he had an interest in it. They'd take him to court. He'd stop diverting it. As soon as no one was watching, he'd divert it again. Finally, the city prevailed after a couple legal efforts, and Emerson abandoned that area and moved down to Monrovia proper. Earlier on, before Emerson was there, the Rankin family had lived there in the 1870s. There might have even been someone who homesteaded there earlier, because an account of the Rankins published in a Monrovia High School annual talked about the family, but also mentioned that there was some habitation there from even earlier than when the Rankins arrived.
So was Emerson Flat named that because it had been owned by Mr. Emerson?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't in honor of him.
It was not in honor of him. No, in fact, there's the 1887 Dick Singer's book talks in detail about the ongoing battle over the canyon water and the diversion there. The triple gravestone is there because 3 of the Rankin children succumbed to what I believe was typhoid fever in 1887. One of the older children in the family, Albert, was apprenticed to a blacksmith in San Gabriel and was gone during the week and then returned to his family in the canyon on weekends, and without realizing he had been exposed, he returned and in turn exposed 2 of his sisters to it, and the 3 of them died within a very short time of each other in 1877. They were initially buried in the canyon. The comment, one of the histories is that the bodies were removed subsequently, but I've checked nearby cemeteries and not found a record of interments there. There's no record at Live Oak, no record at Mountain View in Altadena, and I don't think there's a record at Fairmont and Azusa.
Is the triple gravestone still there?
It's there. It was originally in an upright position, and at one point the triple gravestone was vandalized and broken into several pieces. Those pieces were reassembled but flat on the ground rather than upright, and a concrete bunker or border was placed around them to hold those pieces together. So it's still there, but replaced or repositioned after the damage was done.
So the road was built to Canyon Park, and then what about the stone hut and is that in Canyon Park or is that somewhere else?
You talking about Ben Overturff?
Yes.
Yeah, Ben Overturff was also from southeastern Iowa. He was from Selma, which again is I believe on the Des Moines River. I don't know if he knew the Bakers or not. They were close enough that they might have known each other in Iowa. But Ben came out about 1901 and shortly thereafter discovered the mountains, and he discovered the Deer Park area. I think it already had its name. I don't think Ben gave it the name Deer Park, but he set up a cabin. A fairly rudimentary cabin initially, and then later on he built a more substantial cabin that was half stone, half timber and metal. And he operated that for many years as the Deer Park Lodge.
And where is that in relation to Canyon Park?
It is in Sawpit Canyon, which branches off to the northeast from Monrovia Canyon.
Okay, go ahead.
So there's a road where you can turn, as you're going in, you can turn to the right. That roadway goes up to the east. It goes past Sawpit Dam or near Sawpit Dam and continues up and beyond Deer Park. There's also the Ben Overturff Trail that branches off that roadway, and you can hike to Deer Park on a route that's almost exactly what Ben Overturff used to use when he went up to the cabin.
But he would just take mules and
Yeah.
and
It typically, Ben, at least during the hiking season, Ben would head up canyon Friday evenings with his pack train and spend the weekend and then maybe come back on Monday. And he would entertain people Saturdays and Sundays. When it was really, really busy, I think Mrs. Overturff, Bertha, stayed up there all week and probably cooked in anticipation of the crowds arriving over the weekend. But this was during the great hiking era in Southern California history. There were many such resorts in the mountains. There was Switzer's Camp. There was above Arcadia was Chantry Flats. Above there was Hoagie's. There were a number of these camps in the mountains where people would come out. Actually, there was also Camp Clovercrest above Monrovia. There's some advertising that talks about it being like 5 minutes from the Pacific Electric. That might have been a slight exaggeration. Anyway, the idea was, well, if you wanted to get away on the weekends, you could hop on the Pacific Electric, specifically come to Monrovia, and then go either to Camp Clovercrest or Ben Overturff's Deer Park and spend the weekend, and then return.
so what years is this about?
I think Ben built the first cabin about 1911. Don't know exactly when he built the second one. I know that Ben was there with some friends in 1914 when there was a famous flood and cloudburst actually the other way around. The cloudburst first and then the flood that virtually wiped out the bottom of the canyon. I mean, the account was, it was the most awesome sound I have ever heard. And after they emerged safely from the cabin, the whole terrain had changed. Boulders had washed out, trees had been ripped out by the roots, and the whole bed of the canyon had changed. That operated until the late 1930s. I think the floods of '38 may have washed out some of the roads. Then World War II came along. By the time the war was over, Ben was no longer physically able to do the same strenuous level of exercise or activity he had before, so it never reopened. I saw the cabin probably about 1954 on a hike. At that point it was intact, but subsequent to that it was, I think the saying was, it was dynamited by the U.S. Forest Service in an effort to discourage vandalism. So the ruins, some of the ruins are still there. Nature, very nice nature center now at the top of the Monrovia Canyon Park, adjacent to the walkway or the hiking trail to the falls. Nice cabin on Emerson Flat operated by the city of Monrovia where you can rent it for daytime events or a weekend. Nicely developed program being presented by city forest rangers or city personnel about the canyon, its activities, its history, and so forth. There were, for one time, one of the park rangers was Hector Inzunza, and Hector used to tell a story involving the ghostly call of the Rankin family. Nice.